Hi everybody, welcome to our home. My husband's here somewhere. He's been in and out all morning taking advantage of this beautiful weather. You hear that? That's a chainsaw. Y'all, if this COVID-19 doesn't come to an end soon, I think we're not going to have any trees left out here. It is feeling a little bit desolate out here, and that's kind of what I want to talk to you about today. I've been studying in the book of Mark, and in particular looking at John the Baptist. And there were two things about John the Baptist that I want to mention today. He had a purpose. God gave him a purpose, and he gave him a position, a place to live out that purpose. And that's his place where he lived out his purpose was in the wilderness. It was a desolate place, and that's kind of how some of us are feeling with our current events right now. So let's just jump right in here and take a look at this. So his purpose of John the Baptist was to prepare the way of the Lord, to make his path straight. In Mark 1:1, it says, the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. It's fascinating to me, you all, that the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ started in the wilderness, because that is the position where God placed John the Baptist, in the wilderness. And I think that's interesting because first he says, go proclaim Jesus, but rather than putting him in a populated area, he put him out in the wilderness away from the people. And it says that the people were going out to him. So before John the Baptist was ever born, God had wilderness plans for him. God's people are not strangers to wilderness living. We can read about it all throughout Scripture. There were the Israelites. They spent 40 years wandering around in the wilderness. Jesus spent time in the wilderness. In Mark 1, verse 12, it says, the Spirit immediately drove him out into the wilderness. And he was in the wilderness 40 days being tempted by Satan. So the Spirit led Jesus into the wilderness, but he was being tempted by Satan. So if you're living in the wilderness, and you're experiencing temptation, remember to identify who that is coming from. That is from the enemy. So the word wilderness, it means solitary, lonely, desolate, uninhabited. Wilderness can refer to times of God's testing and trials in our own lives. I think many of us would agree that this epidemic, it kind of feels like some of us are living in the wilderness. Last year, I witnessed something that, y'all, it made me in awe of God and his care for those who are in the wilderness. And I want to share this with you today. It's a story about my family, my nephew and his family. They welcomed a new baby girl into their family. They named her Amelia Ray, named after her great-grandmother, my mother, Norma Ray. And after about a week after her arrival, they began to notice that she was not feeling well. And so they took her to the emergency room, and after a series of testing in different locations, they determined that Amelia Ray has heart disease, and she was diagnosed with hypoplastic left heart syndrome. And that meant she was going to need open heart surgery. And as her mother began to post on social media, updating the family of what was going on, people began to flood her site with well wishes, with concern, with love, with commitment to pray. And one particular posting caught my attention. It was posted by our daughter, Amanda Ray, who is also named after my mother, Norma Ray. Y'all, doesn't that tell you something about my mother? And I want to read Amanda's post. She said, I'm so sorry you guys are going through this. I have a dear friend whose son has hypoplastic right heart syndrome. So I know it's a long road ahead for you. He just had his third surgery last year. And though he will always have certain limitations, you would never know he went through all that. He runs and plays like any other kid. Anyways, I'm continuing to lift Amelia and your family in prayer. And with her post, she shared the link to her friend's website. And on her website, she recognized the gut punch that a parent receives when they receive such horrible news about their baby. And she makes a comment that I think every parent is desperate to hear. She says, "It's not your fault." And then she did something that offered tremendous hope. She shared images of her own son. The first image was of an infant who was 2 weeks outside of having open heart surgery. He had a scar running all the way down his chest. But what was so sweet about that picture is that his smile was larger than his scar. And in the final picture, it was a 3, maybe a 4-year-old little boy jumping in the air, and he was wearing heart-shaped sunglasses. And he looked like a little boy with a lot of energy, just a typical little boy that would probably be hard to keep up with. But y'all understand that those images, the hope that they offer a family who has just walked into the other side of that wilderness? Tremendous hope. And this woman, her voice from her own wilderness experience was offering tremendous hope to others who have stepped into the same wilderness. Amelia Ray just maybe about 2 weeks ago just underwent her second open heart surgery right in the midst of all this COVID-19. She's home now recovering with her family, so y'all stop and say a prayer for her and for her family. God has a purpose for us in the wilderness, just as John the Baptist had a purpose. He wasn't out in the wilderness for no reason. There was a purpose for his wilderness visit. And so what is your purpose in the wilderness? We are to use our wilderness experience as our platform to proclaim Jesus and the hope of Jesus. So how can we use your wilderness experience to offer hope to others? Thank you. Wait, y'all hear that? That's a chainsaw. He cannot cut down another tree. I gotta go.